Morning, everybody. Thanks very much for the invitation to talk this morning. It's a sport I'm very passionate about, and I'm actually quite grateful to Sue for suggesting this as a talk, because it's enabled me to kind of go all the way back to try and trace the roots of why I really do enjoy this so much. And in doing that, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but I found out a little bit more about myself, if you like, and the why I do certain things, and that's made it far more interesting for me. It's also given me the opportunity to root around in archives and find some photographs which help to tell my story. I'm going to go all the way back to my childhood in Hull, and then come all the way back to the current day, almost literally the current day, as I prepare for the spine race coming up on the 19th of June. In fact, it was Sue who suggested the title, that is anybody insane enough to kind of do that, having already failed at one attempt at that, which I'll tell about as we go through the slides. So when I'm showing the presentation, I can't actually see your questions come up. So I'm hoping Sue will be able to kind of relay those if they come up during the talk, or we'll gather all the questions together at the end, and I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about any aspects of this at the end. So I'm going to slip into this now. Now, Crowdcast is one I've not used before. Sue and I have had a good kind of mess around with it, but let me see if I get this right. So let's see if that works. Why is that? I'm going to there and there. So is that working, Sue?
Yes, I've switched my microphone off so that the dogs don't interrupt me by barking in the background. But yes, it's working beautifully. Yeah.
The title was partly created by Sue, but I've stuck the word cheerful in because that is my disposition. And I think that's one of the things actually that does keep you going at the end. So great title, Sue. Thanks very much. Now then, I would have thought a few of you at least will know who this young lady is, and wondering why on earth the young child on the left is looking so quizzical at her. The lady is Jasmin Paris. And she really kind of erupted onto the news headlines in 2019, in January 2019, as the first woman to win the spine race. And I'll explain what the spine race is in a moment. She also beat the men's record by a whopping 12 hours. This lady ran 268 miles, almost non-stop, with 3 hours sleep, including that 83 hours. Through the night, through the day, through every possible conceivable weather to smash this record. She was a PhD student, she's a vet, and not only that, at each of the checkpoints along the way, she was expressing her breast milk so that she could feed the young person on the left. Yeah, so she is one amazing woman, and I'll show you a little bit more about her now, but it also helps to introduce my sport. So firstly, about the Pennine Way. So some of you will know of it, and some of you will well have walked it. It's always one of those kind of rites of passage as a walker almost. If you're a land lover, then the Pennine Way will crop up in your life at some point or other. It runs generally from the south to the north, and you start in Edale. I don't know if my mouse pointer is visible, but you start in Edale and you go all the way north up to just peeking over into the Scottish border at a place called Kirk Yetholm. Now, that is 268 miles, but the most important thing is it's along the watershed of the UK. It's along the watershed of the Pennines, and the watershed is where the water gathers, and then it sheds itself either to the left or to the right. And generally speaking, the landscape is as it is on the right there. There are some times, obviously, where it dips into valleys, and it's very pleasant and very popular. Places like Malham, for instance, Pennine Way passes through there. But the rest of the time, it's up in this kind of land. So this isn't easy running territory. You can see to the far right of the photograph, it's quite well churned up there, where runners have been, well, runners and walkers, of course. And this is quite an old photograph, have churned it up. So what they've started to do now is that sections of it have been paved. And that is, you know, in many respects, when the weather's like it is today, that's fine, that's great. But in winter, it's treacherous. And to try and run on those stones when there's a vague layer over it, a thin layer of ice on top of it, is, well, you're just asking for trouble, you know. So it's kind of a benefit for the landscape, and that's obviously must come first, but it's also brought with it its other kind of challenges as well. So the idea of the spine race then is that you run from Edale to Kirkheatholme in the quickest time you can. You've got 5 checkpoints, and only 5, so each checkpoint is 50 miles apart. And at those checkpoints you'll get food, you can have a quick sleep if you want to, and obviously, you know, the people who are just in there to finish the event will have a kip. You can pick up items from a drop bag, which is taken for you from checkpoint to checkpoint, but the kit you need to carry with you on your back is large. It's usually about 10 kilos, and with water, that kind of comes up to about 12 kilos. You've got to have a BV bag, sleeping bag, all kinds of stuff, and you've got to carry that all the time, otherwise you're disqualified. So you'll see in this clip, and I'm only going to show a couple of minutes of this clip, the way in which the kind of checkpoint routine works. At this point in this story, where Jasmin is kind of heading towards the finish, she's up on last year's winner. You'll see the guy Eugenie coming in a few minutes behind, well, quite a while behind her, and he's absolutely startled that she's gone ahead. She's actually left the checkpoint and gone on. And you'll see the pack that she's carrying, the weight that's in there, and the fact that, you know, she's just got to get herself together. And the other thing that should be pointed out is you only have 30 minutes in these checkpoints. So you've got to get in, get your food, and get out. So at this particular checkpoint, I should say. So I'll just show a little bit of this, and hopefully you can pick out some of those points.
Mate, let's go and finish this off.
There you go.
Thanks very much. No, she's gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're in the park. Fanta? Yeah. Yeah. And before Greenhead. Wow.
So that gives you a glimpse of what it's like at the front. Not something I'm ever likely to experience, but you could see also the landscape changing through the night. You're navigating through the night. You're usually on your own, and you really need to know your stuff. You've really got to know the landscape, know the route, and know what to do if you get off route. So that's the challenge there. But then you see the day comes, and you see the views. But she was still running, and that was about 255 miles in, and she's still running. Amazing lady. My story, though, begins in Hull. And what I've tried to do through this presentation is give you an inkling of what it is that kind of spurred me to do what I do. Where does this come from? Why have I decided to do this? And I think it's really fascinating. So I became fascinated really early on. I was born in 1950 with all things transport. Many of you will know that bottom right photograph is a trolley bus, one of the few places to have trolley buses in the UK. But they were amazing things, a standard bus, but it was driven by electricity from overhead wires, which meant that they were kind of restrained by the tracks in the sky, if you like. But my main passion as a teenager was railway, was steam trains. And our local depot was called Dairy Coats. And I would go down there on a Sunday morning, jump on my bike, cycle down there and walk round the shed. Now, of course, these days that would be just, not on at all. But, you could walk around, there would be coals burning from underneath the trains. There was no health and safety or anything like that. You could walk around, bag the numbers, go outside, walk across the tracks. And it was just such a different world, but probably not really very sensible. But anyway, that's how it was then. So that, if you like, the train spotting side of things, it was much more than that. It was much more the fascination of how railways ran and how they were organised and timetables and all that kind of thing. So I had a passion about organising, detailing, writing down routes, looking at times between different stops, how you would change, how you would move from one station to another or change lines. That became quite a fascination for me. So in order to kind of, as all with all things you have a passion about, you decide to go further afield. And the nearest main stations to me, for the main line, which is where you saw the powerhouse engines, were at Doncaster or York. So that's where I was bound. But of course, I couldn't afford it to have any pocket money or anything as such that could pay for a train fare. So I had to cycle there. And this is a really blurred map, but it's an old one. And I deliberately wanted this one because it doesn't have motorways on it. But you can see Hull more or less in just off centre to the right, just in the bend of the River Humber there. And you can see York to the top left, and you can see Doncaster to the bottom left. Each of those is about 44 miles to those places, but as I say, they were on the main coast, the East Coast West main line, so that's where you saw the big stuff. So in order to get there, I had to cycle there, and that's quite a way for a teenager on what in those days would be classed as hybrid bikes. I didn't get what we'd call a racing bike until much later on. So I would trog along the A63 and then down through Thorn and then to Doncaster with my banana and jam sandwiches and a little bag on my backpack. No clothing to note of other than a waterproof top, a cape, and I'd cycle down there. I'd get up really early in the morning, go down there, and then similarly to York. So one of the things I really enjoyed then was the challenge of doing that ride, because that's a long way for a 12, 13, 14-year-old. And how times have changed, that parents, were quite happy to let me do that. And I didn't feel they were, lacking any responsibility. It was quite common for that kind of thing to happen. So anyway, so you've got a kind of a thread coming in now of the fact I really enjoyed that kind of long pursuit of doing these things. And so I think this is probably one of the early seeds of what was happening later. I inevitably joined the Cyclist Touring Club, and our Sunday rides, which I always cycled with the A team, were up in the Scarborough area often, very hilly, often covering 120, 130 miles in a day. So the theme's developing now, but this time it's developing through cycling, or at this point it was developing through cycling. They were great. The CTC was absolutely fabulous, and I got my racing bike, I got everything else. It was just great. Loved those days. Then life starts to happen. We moved from Hull to the West Coast. The company I was working for at the time moved me over, so that was fine. We took the family over, and we lived in Formby near Liverpool. My ex-brother-in-law, I used to stay with him occasionally when I went to see one of my clients down in Reading, and he lived just outside Reading. And one day when I arrived at his house to stay over that night, he had maps laid out all over the floor. And I was intrigued by this and said, what on earth is this? And he says, I'm looking to do something called a Lyke-Wake walk. And that was just, you know, I didn't know anything about this at all. This was a completely new domain to me. And he explained that it's the route from Osmotherley Priory to the sea at Ravenscar, where the monks of the priory used to carry their dead. And they used to carry coffins on their shoulders all across the moors. And that green line that you see across there is almost exclusively moorland. It passes Farlingdale's early warning station at the end, but that's in a moorland setting as well. So it's a pretty hard going walk. And as you can see, it's 40 miles. And I was captivated by this. And I said, I'd like to do that with you if you don't mind. I had no walking experience as such. I'd done quite a few walks with my dad, but that was about all really, you know, dozen miles, then down to the pub type of thing. But this was different. And we did it. We took off with his parents as the support crew, who met us at probably one of each of these brown lines that you see running down, which are the roads. I had to drop out at Farlingdale because my feet were just absolutely mashed. And that's at 33 miles. But that was it. I was hooked completely. And it wasn't the fact of the distance. It wasn't the fact that we were, you know, we were doing something big and adventurous and dangerous. Yeah, it was the landscape. It was the nighttime in the moors, because you do it overnight, and that just completely captivated me. And that was it. I was hooked at that point, and immediately things started to change from cycling over to, well, long distance walking. So we did, so obviously that first crossing, which was 86, isn't recorded, but because I didn't finish it. But then I finished 3 quickly off the trot with various members of my family, and my daughter helped me on the 87 one, I think, 88. No, she finished it with me, should I say, and various friends on there. And then I thought it'd be quite nice to have a go at it again a few years ago. So in 2014, they were having the Golden Jubilee of the race. So I went up there, and back in 87, I finished it in something like 16 hours. That was about the average then, was about 16, 17 hours. And I was able to do it in 12 hours all those years later. So that was great. Yeah, really enjoyable. So that, and you can see the coffin logo in the emblem there for the walk. I strongly recommend you look up that. If you've still got a long walk in you, then that's a really good place to start. And that's what's captivating. Okay, this is the perfect day, isn't it? It's a perfect August day with the heather in bloom. But these crosses, they crop up all the way across the moors. Either these or stones with inscriptions on, and they guide you along this path. So it isn't kind of footpath signs or pointers or anything. It's these old signs, these old stones, and that's what gives the mystery to the moors. And it's the moorland then becomes another strong theme in my talk, really, in about me. So we have the long distances, we have the intricacy of timetables and planning and logic and where you go to next and maps, and then you have the moors. And you start staring all those things together, and that's where, if you like, I come from. The moors are not an easy place to be. On a perfect day, they're great. They're just like anywhere. But once the weather turns, they turn rapidly nasty on a moorland, because the moors are flat. The wind will funnel up through the sides of the valleys, up onto the moors, and then skid across the moors at a tremendous pace. The rain turns from being vertical to horizontal, and it isn't long before you're absolutely, struggling. And you can see the landscapers for what are they called, peat gruffs. Now, this is, again, an old photograph, because I wanted to capture the moors as they were before, all the paths kind of cut in. But you can see the Pennine Way cuts across more or less the middle of the photograph. You can just see the thin line, and that's starting to be paved at that point. But you can see some of the other scars of erosion that walkers have created on the moors. That's Bleaklow, and it's and the name is thoroughly apt. Bleaklow is a very bleak place. I took this liking of long distances a little further. Somebody at work, a very good friend of mine called Dennis, recommended somebody called an organisation called the Long Distance Walkers Association, LDWA, and that was an acronym you'll hear quite a lot now. And that again was just like coming home. You know, their minimum distance is 21 miles, hence the name, but they walked. Yeah, and that was great. So that was fine. But they allowed runners as well. But at this point, I'm just walking. So that's the first one I did back in '93, somewhere called the Angles Campbell, which is Belmont, Winter Hill area. And again, it's moorland. And again, I thought, oh yeah, you know, this is a sport for me. I very gradually worked my way up over 6 years, as you can see, to the 100 milers, which is their kind of flagship event. There's a 100-mile event in the LDWA every year. It's this weekend that's just passed. So it was the bank holiday weekend. And obviously for the last 2 years, this has not happened. But it takes place in a different part of the country each year. So my wife and I delight in going up to wherever it is that we have to go. And you'll see in a moment, they're all around the UK. And we'll... Helen will get a holiday in that particular area, and I will go and do these crazy things. So it's perfect, absolutely perfect. And we also, for quite a number of years, used to checkpoint on the Marshalls Walk, which is where the people who were working on the event on the day get a chance to actually do the event. It's called the Marshalls Walk, which takes place on the bank holiday at the beginning of May. So Helen and I have often supported that with a little tent high on the moors and cooking bacon and eggs at 2 o'clock in the morning for people. Great fun, great sport. So that was the first 100 I did, and that was, as you can see, in 1999. And then the latest one I did was the Hadrian 100, and that was in May 2019. Obviously, there hasn't been one since then. And 35 hours 53, which was my fastest. So that's not bad. After 10 hundreds, and I got that certificate on the left there for completing 10 hundreds, I did my fastest, which I'm quite pleased with. That's Hadrian's Wall one as well. So that's 2 events I've done up there. The Hadrian 100 was not an easy one. And I look back at that and think, well, goodness, I don't know how that was so quick, because it was appalling conditions overnight. That photograph on the left has been put there by the stakes have been put there by the marshals because the weather was closing in on a notorious piece of land called Cross Fell, which is near Penrith, just under 3,000 feet high, and it's known for its high winds. And this was no exception. It was raining, it was misty, and the wind was very strong. And they put these stakes up to try and guide you across. And then the trig point, as you can see on the right, there's a self-clip. The self-clip is to make sure you go there. So you have to clip your tally to show that you've actually been there before coming down the other side of the mountain. So that was a night to remember, was that. But you have the good nights as well, of course. And then you're walking a bit further, and that's the kind of view you get. So pluses and minuses. There are other events around the calendar which are quite notorious, quite famous. The Felsman hike is another toughie, and I did a few of those. I think I only completed 2, but I entered a few. And then the Bullock Smithy is an interesting one because quite a few of these events are organised by scout troops, and the Bullock Smithy is done by a scout troop. So that's a couple more that people might have heard of if they're into this kind of thing. Those booklets on the left are my certificate folders, so you can see that. And then more recently, we've moved away from certificates over to medals. And of course, over the last year and a half, what's also happened is that the main events haven't been able to take place, and this has been a real problem for the organisers because it's the money they need, it's the funding that they've had, and in many cases, for instance, with the medals, especially that one at the bottom there, that silver one, they'd already been bought. Yeah, they'd already been put in place. So what we're going to do with those? So very gradually, this theme of a virtual ultra came up, where you actually had to do the same mileage as the main event, but you could do it locally. and you could do it in whatever way you wanted and over usually a tight time scale. But so you paid a modicum of money, usually to pay for the postage and the medal and just a few quid extra for admin. But that was enough to keep the organisers going through this event. So in the end, I don't know how many I did of these. I think I did 12 or 13 of these virtual events. One of them was very long. The Spine Ultra was all 268 miles, but over a month. So that's 8 miles a day, religiously 8 miles a day. And inevitably, I had some 32-mile days coming up towards the end in order to finish the target. But so the organisers really deserve a big pat on the back there for coming up with something as ingenious as that. So that's a list of just the greater than 100 milers that I've done. So you can see that it's not all success. Quite a few did not finish there, the DNFs, for various reasons. The zzz ones, here's where I just couldn't be bothered. I just thought to myself, as Sue was saying, I think at the beginning, why am I doing this? I just can't be bothered about this. And I think on that 2007 one, it was on the Marshall's Walk, and my wife was waiting at a checkpoint just to see how I was getting on. And that was just too much of a temptation. I just sat in the car and said, sod this for a game of soldiers, and pulled out. But the rest of them I've managed. So, yes. But of course, I had to indoctrinate Helen into the art of long distance walking. So in 2008, we set off on Offers Dyke, and I carried this huge pack with everything in it called Goliath, which still comes with us when we go wild camping. And that was great. And we did that in various stages over consecutive Easters while we nobbled it off bit by bit. But we did finish it on one very, very wet and rainy day in Chepstow. We finished that off. Because the ultimate driving thing, of course, for all of these events is cake. Yeah, the more you do these events, the more cake you can eat. And there's a couple of photographs of the dike itself. And it's a fascinating walk. It's really interesting. And even if you only do short sections of it, it's got so much there, so much rewarding in it. But it's quite tough going. Once you get into mid-Wales, it really does start getting undulating quite severely. And then we took on Glendower's Way, which is kind of mid-Wales. And, well, the picture tells it all, really, doesn't it? We only did half of that, and we've still got to go back and do the other half because various other things intervened in the meantime. But that was an enjoyable day. Then things really started to move on when technology comes in. And this is really where, if you like, the sport is at the moment, and it's a fascinating place. The first thing is that you can create your maps on the screen. Yep. So instead of having to buy Ordnance Survey maps and carry them around with you and have to go through the rigmarole of unpacking them in the wind to see where you are and then actually working out where you are, then now what you could do is you could actually print the maps beforehand, and you can see there one, and this is part of a walk I'm planning for next weekend. You can actually lay out along the path. In some versions of the software, it'll actually do little bits of route finding for you, but I prefer to do it myself. So you can see here I'm laying out on the left of the screen the various stopping points on the way where I intend to have a break, or I'm going to pitch my tent, and then you can see the height profile at the bottom. So that's the planning. And of course you can print these maps then, because once you join the Ordnance Survey software library, you have right to print the maps. The maps can also be downloaded onto your phone, and that's a picture of where we live in Chester, on the left of that. But of course nowadays you can even get them onto your watch. And this is my my Garmin, which has become a trusty friend. Now, you may say to yourself, well, this is cheating. Come on, this is cheating. You shouldn't need this. And, to be honest, I agree with that. But at the same time, it's really safe. And if I would have the choice of finding out where I am, so, I don't spend too much time losing energy trying to get back on the track when I'm actually heading in the wrong direction, or the mountain rescue people can tell me where the next exit is because they can see me, then I think that the technology wins hands down. I know not everybody will agree, but I'm a convert, and I would much rather, and of course on things like the spine, you have to have this technology. They insist that you have it. Because they want to know that you've got the ability to be able to find where you are if you get lost. There are some events, there are plenty of events like the OMM and the LAM where you're not allowed to use technology. And I've got a really wacky event to finish this particular presentation with where that goes to an extreme, but and that's just a few slides away now. Then you carry a GPS tracker with you. You've got this on your shoulder and the satellites can see you. And if you're in an event, they can show it on screen so that people can see where you are. So here's a snippet from, I think this is somebody's mobile of the Spine Race from a few years ago. And you can see the various competitors there who are making their way along the track. Now, this is compulsive viewing, and this has become a national sport now called dot watching. And the idea is that you watch an event such as the Spine or the recent Pennine Way attempts and see where the runners are. And you just marvel at what they're doing. Occasionally, it can have its humorous moments. I've blotted out the poor person's name here, but this is also the Spine. It's crossed the A66, and that's a terrible bit around Dry Rig Spring because it's just all water. It's just a paddy field for about 6 miles. And you can see that this person's been trying to find a way across, trying to find a bridge across, or going down the wrong footpath and things like that. And what usually ends up is that people at home are kind of shouting at the screens, saying, "You're going wrong, come on, go left." So that's quite an enjoyable aspect of it. So let's get back to the Spine Race then. So I entered doing this for years, watching these dot watches for about 5 years and just driving hell and absolutely batty with this constant, barrage of it. It just became inevitable that I would enter. And I did so. And in 2019, we went up to 2020. Yes, 2020. We went up to Edale, and on January, whatever it was, I set off with goodness knows how many others on the Spine Race. And after I think it'd be about 30 miles, you come to a place called Ladder Rocks, and you saw what the state of the peat is on the moors. And that was a very, very deep peaty section. But I'm quite used to running in peat. It's not a problem, except on this particular occasion, my foot went quite deep into the peat and locked between two rocks that were hidden under the surface of the peat. And as I was moving forward, then that just twisted my knee. So I managed to keep going for about another 15, 16 miles to checkpoint 1. But it was quite clear. My knee was swollen at that point. So it was quite clear that the race was over at that point. So there's unfinished business there, isn't there? So we're going back to it. So once again, let's go back to the Spine then. And this will be taking place in a couple of weeks' time. This is the summer version. It's exactly the same distance and different challenges. Yes, you have nicer weather perhaps, but you also have the heat. You also have the fact that water is very challenging at this time of the year. Where do you get the excess water from? So you've got to learn water filtration techniques and various other things. The other big problem for me at this time of the year, flies. I hate them, and they kind of buzz around your head while you're running along. So you have to wear a mask type of thing to keep them off. So there's pluses and minuses. The exhaustion from the heat, it's much harder to climb hills in heat. So there's pluses and minuses. And I think I would prefer the winter one, but here we go. It's going to be a summer one. That's me. The left-hand one is the one before, is the start of the Hadrian's 100. And just a little bit about gear here to finish with. The blue vest that I'm wearing on the left is quite a common site now for ultra runners. They're very good. They're brilliant. They hug you. They're just really very thin, and they hug you. And you've got stuff sacks all over them, so you can stick things in, stick your essential clothing and your kit. And at the front, at the top, at the front, on each side, you have what are called these squashy bottles, which hold your liquid, and they shrink as you drink, so they don't splosh around as you're running. So little things, little attention to detail like that is superb. Whereas on the right, that's me just about to set off to the start of the spine race. So you can see the difference in the. You can't see my rucksack, but it's it was bigger than Jasmin Paris's. The pouch at the front is a godsend. It's like your personal handbag, and you can put your phone, you can put your things in, that you're going to need en route, and you have to carry the bigger bottles because I need more fluid with me as I'm going. So that's the difference in the kit that you need for these two types of events. And those are the start times for the spine coming up. So on Saturday, I'm in cohort 2, and you can see my name down there in the middle column, down at number 719. So you'll be you're very welcome to watch if you like, and there'll be links all over the place. I'll be putting it on my Facebook page, or if you want to email me, I'll send you a link and see how I get on this time. It's a huge challenge. You can see at the top there the various cutoff times. I've got 6.5 days to do this. The kind of standard for finishing the spine is a kind of an endurance for kind of tough 30 to 40 year olds who are really kind of pushing it through, will be about 15-16 days, and I've got 6. Jasmin did it in 2.5, well, just under 3. So there's a difference there, isn't there? But you can see the cutoff times. So I've got to get to those various checkpoints of Hebden, Malham, Hawes, etc. by the time stated on that pink strip, which refers to my times. So, well, we'll see how it goes. As you've seen from my earlier slide, I've had a few DNFs in the past. You live and learn. But the Pennine Way still continues to fascinate people. At the bottom, this is the official fastest known time, FKT organisation. And you can see that Mike Hartley first ran it in 2 days, 17 hours and 20 minutes back in 1989. Then there was a flurry of activity as lockdown started to ease last summer. First, John Kelly, who's an American living in the UK now, did it in 2 days, 16 hours, only to be snubbed a week later by Damien Hall on the right, the guy in blue, who knocked 3 hours off. So John Kelly was having none of that. So he's just a few weeks ago decided to come back and have another go at it, and he's managed to knock another 3 hours off it, well, 3.5 hours off it. So that's amazing, really. So since Mike Hartley's record, 7 hours has been knocked off this event. The difference, though, you'll notice, is that they have pacers. So the guy running with Damien on the photograph on the right is one of the pacers, and usually have 2 with them. They carry all the equipment. Yeah, they'll carry the water. So you can see that Damien and John are not carrying any main equipment at all, the side runners. And these pacers and support crew will change at every road crossing. So as they approach a road crossing, the next group of runners are ready and they'll go off. So really I'm not taking anything away from them, but they are running light, if you like. And the idea is to get the fastest known time for running the event from top to bottom. So it's not to be compared with Jasmin, who was carrying her own sack all the way and all her own equipment and everything like that. These guys are supported. So that's my talk. There's a few things in there which I'd just like to finish with, really. One is the craziest event, if we're talking about insanity, and I'll leave you to look this up because I think I'm running a little bit over time here. It's something called the Barkley Marathons, which takes place in Tennessee each year. And this is an absolute, it's just bizarre to the extreme. So I'll leave you to write that down and look that up because it's fascinating.
Does Helen know about that one, or are you keeping it a secret?
Oh yes, Helen doesn't know about that one. I think it's probably out of this lifetime, I'm afraid, Sue. But I think what I've tried to do is to show you, well, what next? I mean, well, it's my DNA, isn't it? This is what I do. This is, you know, all the aspects of this are there on the screen. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to supporting. I'll probably go back and do a lot more cycling, you know, and things like that. But I don't think I'll ever stop this long distance side of me from happening. So thanks very much. There's my email address if you want to drop me a line at all. And thank you very much, Sue. I'm sorry I've gone a bit over.
Don't worry, don't worry. Right, let's unfocus the screen. Yep.
Stop sharing.
Yep. So if anyone's got any questions for Garfield, can you either type them into the chat or preferably into the Ask a Question? I have a couple of questions. I'm sure we've all seen the headlines recently where 21 ultra runners died in a race in China. Does that bother you? Does it ever worry you?
Yes, it does worry me. We haven't had anything quite as bad as that in the UK, and it seemed that on this particular event they just literally went up in their shorts and tops. They had no gear with them. The events I go in for are very, very strict on what you carry, and they will reject you. You know, they'll disqualify you if you turn up at a checkpoint and you've, you know, discreetly left something behind, type of thing. You have to carry everything with you all the way. And you saw how much stuff Jasmin had to carry. They knew she was going to finish. Yeah, she was going to finish quickly. She still had to carry the stuff.
Is there a list of stuff that you actually have to carry? Because I can imagine you said it's about 10 kilos. Do you spend all your time trying to get micrograms off that?
Yes, you do. Very much so. Yeah, get the lightest down sleeping bag. But it's got to go down to a certain temperature. If you're doing the Smart, it's got to go down to -10. Things like that. So it's also an expensive sport as well when you look at it from that point of view.
I bet. And you showed us your watch that you could look at a map on, but you also wear glasses. Isn't that a problem?
No. There are all kinds of things you can get. I've got a pair of, I think they're goggles for industrial use, but have got they're bifocals, and you can get them for the strength of your glasses. So you can wear these as you're running, if you're in wind and rain, but still through the bottom half of the lens be able to look at your watch. So, but normally it's not a problem. Normally I have my watch just on a thin breadcrumb. I don't have the detail. I don't have the landscape. I just have this, am I on track or I'm not on track? And I just look at that very now and again just to see how it's going.
Do you get lost often? Do you ever get lost?
No, not so far. Not even before the technology came in. Because as I said earlier, maps are I just love maps.
Okay, so we have a question. We saw a picture of feet in a bucket earlier. How are your feet after these events?
Fine. Yeah. I mean, Helen will tell you that, you know, the first couple, you know, they were trashed. They were in a really bad state. But very gradually, you pick up the tricks. And my trick is that I use 2 pairs of socks. I have a thin liner sock, and then I have an outer sock. And then I always blather my toes and heel with shea butter. And that stops the toes rubbing together. And then as soon as I feel there's any friction coming back, then I'll stop and I'll put some more on. And the other thing you must always do, even if you feel one of these tiny, tiny little stones that just crept in and it's kind of annoying you, is sort it. If you let that stay, it'll just start rubbing away at your skin, and then you've got problems. But I don't have problems these days at all. Okay,
we have a question from Richard. Have you ever done the Bob Graham round in the Lake District? I've been a carrier pacer for 2 friends, just 10 miles-ish at a time. I am left in awe of their achievements.
So am I, Richard. Complete.
What is it? I don't. Can you describe it?
Well, yeah, Bob Graham was a famous fell runner, and he set up this challenge to do. And I think it's any number of Lakeland tops in in 24 hours. It's 62. It's 62 Lakeland tops in 24 hours. That's it. And you start at the Moot Hall in Keswick. It's quite iconic. It's got a long history of legendary names who have done this, and then each year it gradually gets chipped away at. And Richard will be one of the people who've been helping. You know, from that photograph that was on the right, where you had the support runner. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that Richard will do. I can't run that fast, Richard. Yeah, I can trog along. I'm just a steady trogger. I just keep going. I'm a bit like a Duracell bunny. Yeah, you wind me up and I just keep going.
I think Richard is very similar, actually. Just
plugs away.
Plugs away.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, my husband tells me he is. I am a total inexpert in these things. Okay. Can I just say that when I originally mooted this with Garfield, it was do we do it before or do we do it after the race? And he was very keen to do it after, and I was very keen for him to do it before, so that we can all watch him and his little dot go round. So I will be sending out a link, as long as he allows me to, so that we can support him in a very, very minor way. But yeah, I got quite hooked, and I'm not interested in these things.
Yeah.
It's
not watching is just, it's amazing, and it makes you appreciate the things that these people get up to. I won't be any great shakes because I'm over 70 now. Yeah, so I'm going to be towards the back of the field, and it's going to be frustrating watching me crawl along. You know, but I'll do the can.
How many over 70s are there in that race? How many are there that could possibly think of doing it?
There's only a couple of others in the kind of club I belong to, you know, on Facebook, just over 70. So, yeah, I mean, the auspices are you know, it's going to be a tough cookie, but there we are.
Richard has commented that yes, indeed, he is a plugger. He'll keep going forever. Yeah. I hope we're not giving him too many ideas on this. His wife might hate me forever. And
well, I think Helen's not that pleased that they're going to have all these people watching. I think it's probably one of those things she'd prefer if it was just kind of quiet and stuck in the back. But I think when you know there's all these people watching you from the sky, it's quite weird, really. Yeah.
I should point out that Garfield has just said to all of us that, well, you know, the summer one can be more difficult than the winter one. But Helen has said to me, she's put her foot down. He's only doing the summer one. So he's not having another go at the winter one. She'd like him in one piece, I think, is the yes. So we're doing this before the race. We can send a link out. You can watch him. I think that's it for today. But Garfield, in his retirement, has taken on a load of extra things, including the hydro hub, which, do you want to give 30 seconds? Quick hydro hub. Okay.
Down by the River Dee at the old hand bridge, you'll see that there's a pumping station, which has not been used since 1947. It's got an incredible history, and I'm working with a team of people to restore that building to make it into an education centre for renewable energy for the future. So we've just got some money from the council to do a feasibility study. So that's what we're working on at the moment.
Okay, so if anybody wants to know more about that, email me, I'll pass it on. And maybe one day you can come back and do a bit about that. That would be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you very much for doing that, Garfield. What's the date of the spine race? When is it?
19th.
The 19th.
That's right. 6 o'clock in the evening. It'll be confusing to start with because there are dots from so many different races all starting at the same time. So there'll be loads of dots on the screen at that point. We'll soon pull out.
Richard Tatton says, good luck with the hydro project. I'm hoping to be off to a festival in a camper van, but I can watch you on my mobile phone.
You can indeed. Yes.
So that will be good.
Just on for a week. It'll be good entertainment.
All right. Well, we're just over the hour, and I think that's been really interesting. And yes, I am pleased it's not me doing it. So
thanks for asking, sir. I thoroughly enjoyed putting it together.
All right. Thank you very much, Garfield. And see you soon.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.